month. Well, that works. Good evening. I'm going to call the April 2022 Public Safety Meeting to order. And I have with me tonight Nick Allen. Sheila Vaccaro is not available to join us tonight. And we're going to go ahead and go right through the agenda. Comments, suggestions, petitions by residents and attendants regarding items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the discussion items. First being the monthly fire department report.
Good evening, Steve Pelna, Fire Chief. Biggest thing that I want to discuss tonight is we're inviting everybody, Mayor and the Public Safety Committee, along with all Borough Council, for a tour of all the stations, Fire Training Center. We're going to do that this Saturday at 9 o'clock. The West Goshen supervisors over the last 2 months have been given personal tours of all of the fire stations and the Fire Training Center. One of them actually got to go on a fire call, so that was pretty exciting. But opening our doors seems to be the spring fever, I guess. Everybody wants to get out, but hopefully you guys can make it so we can give a kind of personalized tour of all the stations, our equipment and such. We're starting to see a regular uptick as we see in the spring for our calls overall. Transportation accidents, we're seeing more than usual. Everybody's out and about. A couple vehicle fires, one on 202, significant fire on a tractor trailer, and a accident with entrapment down on South Campus on South New Street. Quite a few assist calls as well. No building fires within our immediate local, but specifically in Concordville and in Goshen Fire Company's territory. We've had a handful of building fires in the last 30 days. So that's all I have for my report. Again, hope to see you guys out on Saturday. And got any questions for me? Let me know.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for extending the invitation. Looking
Sure.
forward to Saturday.
Okay, great.
Any questions for Chief Pelna? No? Chief?
Good evening. Jim Moorhead, Chief of Police. I'll keep it brief. I know we have a lot on the agenda tonight. For the month of March, the Police Department experienced 3,538 calls for service, of which 2,707 of those occurred in the borough. If we could go 2 more pages down, Jeff. Just scroll up just a little bit. This is part 1, or our serious crime, and I'm happy to report the men and women of the department continue to do an outstanding job patrolling, keeping neighborhoods and citizens safe. You can see that to date, we are still no homicides, rapes, robberies, arsons, burglaries are at an all-time low. We have a slight increase in assaults and thefts, but beginning St. Patrick's Day, go figure, we start to see a little more activity with the bar district in town, so that's where a lot of that activity has come from. We can scroll down to the last page. This is where the bulk of our business is at the moment. As discussed last month, we're seeing extreme spikes in what we call part 2 or nuisance type crime. Forgery fraud continues to trend. Narcotics. The reason that is such a spike is because our drug unit is back up to the number it should be at, and they're doing very well. And then you can see public intoxications and all others, which would be your noise complaints, urinating in public, things like that. Those citations and violations are on the rise. So, you know, I think although we're working hard to interdict those issues and talk to people, educate them, and when necessary, cite on those types of issues, I think we have a good problem under the current circumstances. We're also seeing a real influx of traffic complaints. It's that time of year when the nice weather's out. I know Ms. Dorsey and myself spoke or emailed a couple weeks ago on a complaint from President Stefano's ward, and we talked about that. That issue is under investigation, and I'll have some information for you on that after the meeting. It's not really anything for public digestion right now, but the traffic unit's working aggressively on that issue on South Matlack Street, and they have some things in place to take a look at the issue. And then also our constant vigilance with uptown noise is something that the officers in their spare time are dedicated to the central business district to look for some of the things that we'll probably hear go by tonight. So we are taking a look at that stuff. Other than that, the officers have been conducting a lot of their spring training, including first aid, CPR, and firearms. You know, it's our typical spring with training. We have defensive de-escalation. A big bulk area of training in that this year is required by state, and we're getting ready to roll that out as well. So things are moving along pretty nice. I can report to you that we have our application process is running very strong, considering what the rest of the county is seeing numbers-wise. To date, we have over 60 applications received and paid for. We have another 30 that we're in contact with those people who have not fully completed the application process. So we're trending above where I thought we would at this point. Application deadline is May 6th. Our officers, our civilian staff, Ms. King, who's the administrative assistant to civil service, and myself, and Dave March, who's the chief dispatcher. They even had an open house on Saturday for people to just come and ask questions. They pushed that out on social media. So we're actively working on the recruitment process and the hiring process. So I'll have more information for you in May on where we stand for our test. That'll be coming up in late May 20th, I believe.
Chief, was the open house this past Saturday or this coming Saturday?
This past Saturday.
And it was well attended?
It was not very well attended. Yeah. It was pushed out on all our social media outlets. I guess nobody had questions or wanted a tour. This is, you know, a lot of the applicants either know of Westchester or know what it consists of. Maybe some of them don't want to put the cart before the horse and get themselves all excited. I don't know why we didn't get a turnout for that.
Sure.
But we're looking at all kinds of different avenues, and the officers are doing well.
Just one other question. These numbers where we see an uptick from 21 to 2022, how do the 22 numbers compare to the 2019 numbers? Are they more comparable?
They're much more comparable.
Okay.
Yeah, almost level playing ground. 2020, 2021, we saw a tank in numbers for obvious reasons, and we're back to 2019 style numbers.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
nothing concerning, nothing more than we saw in 2019 or 2018. Overall, serious crime continues to trend over 21% down from, you know, the mid 2000s. So we're trending in a good direction there, but our nuisance crime is still an area that we need to work on.
And remind me again how many officers we're planning to bring on with this next round?
We currently have 3 vacancies.
Okay.
So we're going to be moving forward and hopefully asking council for 3. You know, maybe early fall would be a realistic date for that process to be complete.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes.
Do you have any questions? Any questions for Chief Moorhead? Okay.
Thank you.
Item number 4, Good Fellowship.
Steve Pelna, EMT driver with Good Fellowship, so I can wear that hat too. Unfortunately, Chaz Brogan is with the ERT team on a call out on assisting WEGO, West Down East Goshen Regional Police Department right now, along with his assistant chief. They're both SWAT medics on the SWAT team, so they're dealing with that unfortunate circumstance. Also, the fire department, we have a presence there as well, assisting the fire department, both with traffic control, and we have an engine and ladder on standby if there's any fires. As far as, especially on the ambulance side, or EMS, continually, I'm amazed by just the sheer volume they do. If you look how much it's increased or is increasing year after year, it blows my mind. Just we interact and work with them on a daily basis, but just the amount of calls they run is staggering. I don't know why Thursday is a peak there. I thought that was pretty interesting, so I'll have to ask Chaz what that's all about. But I do know, much like us, the weather's getting warmer. You're going to see a lot more people and activity on the weekends, so their call volume definitely goes up on the weekends. Still, majority of their transports are going to Chester County. Chaz is also on the County EMS Council, and I don't want to say it's stabilized, but it's under control, at least for the time being, as far as the volume of patients going into Chester County ER. So at least they're managing it right now with the closures. So I will answer anything to the best of my ability, but it's not my expertise. Any questions, or I can check in with the.
I don't have any questions,
Okay.
Chief. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, item number 4D, the Westchester Chamber of Commerce.
How are you? Thank you for the time on the agenda tonight. My name is Katie Walker. I'm the president of the Greater Westchester Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here on this finally warmer April day to talk about Christmas and the holidays. So I know that you're both very familiar with the Westchester Christmas Parade that has been going on in the borough now for, I believe, over 40 years. And just a couple of things that I want to touch on to provide a little bit more information for some context. The past several years have presented pretty significant challenges for the chamber, as they have for many businesses and organizations. Our organization, which is funded primarily through membership dues from thriving businesses and non-member dues in the form of sponsorship support for programs and events. Both sources were negatively impacted as a result of the pandemic, and the chamber board had to make some tough decisions, including staff cuts, major shifts in how we were operating, supporting our members, cancellations of events and programs. One of those programs impacted and canceled as a result, as you know, of the challenges mentioned above, was the Old-Fashioned Christmas Parade. The chamber, which has been presenting this event for over 25 years, also presents several different holiday programs that take place in the borough. This includes the parade, the tree display on the historic courthouse lawn, the holiday greens that are hung on all of the storefronts in town every year, the WSFS toy drive that benefits local nonprofits, and recently we added the Chester County Hospital Lights Up Holiday Weekends in Westchester event, where we actually hired a professional decor company to install string lights and lit garland wrapped lampposts on Gay, Market, and High Streets in the borough. This was all done by the Greater Westchester Chamber in partnership with organizations like the BID and other organizations and businesses that were sponsors. The holiday programs that are organized by the chamber, as I just mentioned, are funded solely through sponsorship support from local businesses and organizations. 100% of the revenue to cover the cost of displays, lights, and events like the parade are raised by the staff and board of the chamber. The chamber estimates that our personnel costs alone to organize and execute these programs that traditionally take about 10 months to plan are approximately between $65,000 and $70,000 a year. After the conclusion of the 2021 Chester County Hospital Lights Up Holiday Weekends in Westchester event, which included the light installation as well as 5 weekends of holiday programming in the borough, we surveyed the downtown businesses and our sponsors to gather feedback on that event. About 95% responded that they loved the lights. They wanted them to be installed again next year. They would love to see us bring back that Lights Up event. But overwhelmingly, everyone said, where is our beloved parade? We really want the parade to be back in the borough. So this brings us to the request that the chamber is asking for from council and support from the borough in order for the chamber to consider planning a borough Christmas parade in 2022. It is really necessary for us to modify the parade event in several ways. That includes reducing the size of the event. We have gotten a lot of feedback from residents and business owners that they felt that it just got too big, and they would like to see it scaled back a bit. So this would mean less parade entries, more local entries, for example, only local marching bands included. I know that we had a marching band competition that was part of the event where we had marching bands coming from all over the state of Pennsylvania. Reducing the number of entries. I believe we were up to 80 different entries in the parade. We're looking to cut this down to about 30. So this would also reduce the time of the event. The parade itself was spanning two and a half hours long, starting at 7 o'clock, not wrapping up until 10 o'clock at night. Little kids that were, excited to see Santa Claus on the float were probably already asleep by the time we wrapped it up. So cutting back on the entries would hopefully significantly cut down on the time of the event. We also need to significantly reduce our costs. This includes costs for many of the parade-related expenses, including the parade producer that we worked with in the past, and also the services from the borough, including the costs for police and public works, which have increased substantially over the past several years. Between 2012 and 2016, the average cost for these services from the borough was around $2,500. In 2017, the cost did increase. I understand that there was a policy change at the borough level at that time, and we've been now paying around $10,000 on average since the last parade around 2016 to 2019 when we held the last parade prior to the pandemic. We also have to recruit a stronger volunteer base to help us plan and execute the parade. This will be necessary to replace the professional parade producers I mentioned that we will not be hiring any longer to plan and produce the parade. So all of this work is going to fall back onto the chamber and just add to our personnel costs as we're managing volunteers to help plan this event for the borough. And then one final important piece of data just to consider, and I know we've talked to several of the council members about this, but we believe over the years that for the evening of the Christmas parade, that the borough was possibly charging a higher flat fee rate for parking in the garages. I believe it was $20 per vehicle. You would know better looking back at that. So it would be interesting to look at parking revenue from the evening of the last parade in 2019 and compare that obviously to 2020 and 2021 on the same evenings. It was typically held that first Friday in December after the Thanksgiving holiday. So hopefully that additional parking revenue could help offset some of that cost for police and public works that evening. So I'm sure that both of you, many of the other council members have heard from constituents that they want to see the parade return, and the chamber really wants to do everything in our power to make that possible. So our request to council and to the borough is to become a partner with the Greater Westchester Chamber of Commerce for this event and subsidize and sponsor essentially the necessary support that we do need from the police and from Public Works for this event. We absolutely understand how important that partnership is with the police that evening. My time prior with the chamber back in 2005 to 2011, I know how closely we worked with the chief at the time. They're very important to making sure that the streets are closed down properly, that traffic is managed, that people are safe at this event, and Public Works also is part of that as well in pulling this event off. And it's really something that in order for the chamber to consider pulling this together this late in the game, we're really going to need the support from the borough in order to do so. So that is my comments.
Thank you, Katie. Some of had an opportunity to look at the numbers from 2019. I think Mr. Metric was nice enough to pull those numbers together. And so we can compare the revenue, the parking revenue. We've also had some preliminary discussions around how, we can help make this happen. I think most of us have also heard the same comments from residents here in Westchester, and I think it has typically been a big draw. I also think the majority of the comments that I've heard have been around scaling it back and making it more of a hometown event and not quite so commercialized. I think that some of the things that we've discussed at the borough level is how we can help make that happen, right? And partner with the chamber and review some of the fees that I guess went into effect in 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
That I think make it cost prohibitive for many events. I'm not a proponent of, a run every weekend, but, maybe we can find a way to manage that a little bit better. And identify the premier events that we'd like to partner on. So Sean and I have talked about looking at reviewing the fees and how we can make it more affordable for chamber and, partnering with BID as well as the borough.
Yeah, I have a couple things to say. Since my term started pretty much when the pandemic started, I have not had the opportunity to work on any of these events. And I do remember I was attending council meetings when these fees were being debated and discussed. And when I think about like what makes Westchester, Westchester, there are, like you were saying, a handful of events that immediately come to everyone's mind. And when I consider, the size of our budget relative to the amount of money it costs, in overtime to make these events happen, it kind of seems like it should be a higher priority to the borough to help foster these events and make sure that they continue and they continue to be good and they continue to be well done. And I think the Christmas parade is like one of the biggest parts of that because I have been involved in it's been a while. I've been involved in the marching band world quite a bit. This might have changed in the past 8 years that it's been, but I know not a lot of people realize that Westchester is a kind of a big deal in that world. In addition to the University of Massachusetts, we are a big leader.
You're talking about the university, right? The university marching band?
Not only, yes, definitely the university marching band for sure. I know at the high school level, there's a lot of, there's a big culture in this area. And I think a lot of that does come from having that competition here. A lot of it does come from the support from the university as well. The awards that the marching band here has won are, I think generally go to D1 schools.
Yeah.
So I've been incredibly impressed with the community we have here. And I know the producer, if I'm not mistaken, has volunteered a lot of his time to help with this event. And it's Todd Marcacci.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And he, just so everybody knows, and it's on the record during the debate, produces the 4th of July parade and the Thanksgiving parade in Philly. In DC, he does their 4th of July parade, the Cherry Blossom parade, the National Memorial Day parade. He does the Magnificent Mile parade in Chicago. He's a big deal. And he's a member of our community. And I just think when you put all that together, it starts to make a little bit more sense why the parade became 2.5 hours long and why it became such a big deal. And speaking as 1 out of 7 on council, if it's our support that's needed to make a big parade, prestigious parade continue, a professional parade, I'm in support of that. I'd love to help make that a reality. I understand that there are a lot of limitations that we're all up against because of COVID. And I guess my questions then, getting all that out of the way, is this idea of a smaller parade. In your mind, is that like a until we get things up and running again kind of idea? Or is that in your mind a more permanent
I would say
fixture?
that's still to be determined. I'm not sure if we would ever plan for it to get back to what it was in 2019. If you were, I don't know if you experienced the 2019 parade where QVC was the title sponsor. They were also broadcasting it nationally. So I think that really brought a lot of people here from the region. We've had phone calls to the chamber office, and I've asked people when they call to ask, what's happening with the Christmas parade, would you mind if I ask where you're calling from? And, oh, I live, 3 hours away in New Jersey. coming to our community, which is amazing, right? So I think that I can't fully answer that question yet. I think we need to see what we can do this year, especially with limited resources, and then hopefully start to build it back up again. Todd, and I think it's important that you mention that, and just something else to add, Todd Marcacci, who lives in our community, he's actually the choreographer for the Westchester University's marching band and color guard as well. He's now also producing the Philadelphia Holiday Parade, which is taking place the day after when our Westchester Parade would happen. So, other communities are adding these events back in. Philly did the Holiday Parade last year, that Saturday in December. I think Downingtown is now doing some type of holiday parade. I think Coatesville might be doing something. So, these other communities that we're also competing against for the space, are adding these things back in. So we would love to bring Todd back. Todd did volunteer his time for many years, but then we needed to start paying him, for his services, because he was really bringing a lot to the table. So I'm hopeful that we can still retain Todd in some way, because I think he had just, this parade was it was a vision of Todd's. I mean, one of the reasons that it got as big as it did was because of Todd's work. So he's still a friend of the chamber, and we're still in touch with him. And, so time will tell if we can bring him back on board.
And I can tell you, Sheila's not here tonight, but she wanted me to speak on how much she supports the parade and how she would like to see it happen in 2022. So from a committee perspective, I think you have our support for finding, trying to be creative and finding a way to get it done. So it'll be discussed next week during the working session, and I think there'll be a vote, final vote on Wednesday at the voting session.
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Any comments from residents in attendance? Okay. 3E, Gay Street, discuss the closure for 2022. Who's presenting that today?
I can give an update on where we are right now. The borough went to the drawing board and looked at logistics and what it would cost, and we sent that information to the committee. It's a flexible number that's mostly made up of labor costs. So there's more, honestly, there's more opportunity costs baked into the discussion than actual costs going out the borough. Dollars going outside the borough would be money going to the contractor to move materials up to the site, which the bid has graciously committed to providing, getting the heavy things to our downtown. There will be sign rental fees. There will be signal services that we'll have to pay for to set and unset the light timing, because if we're closing the streets, it has to be flashing yellow. When we reopen them again, we don't want it to stay flashing yellow. We want it to go back to normal operations. One thing, and John, you're probably going to be hearing this for the first time, so I try to keep you in the loop, but it's a very fluid situation, so we're working on solutions that make sense. We think logistically it's the best idea to, if we were to close the street for the weekends, let's just take that as a goal, we would have to commence it's recommended that we commence the closure early on a Friday, because that makes the least conflict and the best chances of success in terms of getting it closed while the traffic is not heavy, getting it closed while we can still get the stragglers who have parked there overnight out of the way, rather than trying to start the closure later in the day during peak traffic times when there's going to be a lot of cars parked downtown, dining and doing all the things you like to do on a Friday afternoon. So in order to close that portion of Gay Street we've been talking about on a weekend schedule, it's really going to have to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. With, on the flip side, reopening the roadway is actually something we can get to early and relatively easily on a Monday. So we can get the road open with relative ease without much trouble. We will work our way contraflow to traffic backwards and probably have it open very early in the morning. So there shouldn't be much obstruction to businesses and activity in the downtown on a Monday, except for maybe those businesses that take their deliveries really early on a Monday morning, which I guess deliveries happen early. I don't know exactly how all the businesses work. John's a better source of info on that. So bottom line is to close at 15 weekends, you're looking at around $36,000 to $40,000 of costs, most of which is in-kind labor costs. And so there's an opportunity cost to that. It's what are those Public Works employees not doing with their time that they're spending opening and closing Gay Street. So we can make adjustments in our work plan. We can work with council's direction, but that is one of the ripple effects of doing this, that I can't be real specific about what that means, but just be cognizant that, assigning 3 to 5 people to work half a day to open and close the street does take a lot of hours off the street and a few pieces of equipment. And the costs this is very gray estimating, because some of those costs could escalate because we might have to bring personnel in on overtime rates, because Mondays and Fridays are our leaner days of the week in terms of staff. So if we really have to get something done and enough people call out, we are in a situation then of offering overtime. And there's a methodology to have to do that to be in compliance with our labor contract, and the Public Works knows how to navigate that, but it's something else to be cognizant of. That's what I have for you and for the committee.
Last month, we had, there was questions on the Sukin Hotel project. I did receive their application for their building permit and for their demolition permit. Currently reviewing that. I would say that if it is in a position to be approved, that it would be done by the end of the month. So that would be, once that's issued, then they're ready to start demolition. It potentially could, yes. Now, whether or not they have everything in line to start in May, I don't know, but something to keep in the back of our mind, that project could very well start in May. I can make that phone call, certainly.
Mr. O'Brien.
Just following up on that, I have John O'Brien, Executive Director, Westchester Business Improvement District. I have had conversations with Scott Zukin about that. He's very committed and wants to do what he can to help further along the Gay Street open air market. So he's very on board to kind of work around to see how we can accomplish both. He has stressed that to me on numerous occasions. And following up on a request of councils, you asked that I survey the businesses to see which of the 3 options they favor. We had a total of 74 businesses throughout the bid responded. 50% of them wanted to see it closed the full Friday through Monday morning. 26% wanted to see it closed the 24/7, like we have the last 2 years. And the remaining 24% did not want to see it closed in 2022. From the business perspective and logistically, I do think the weekend is the best approach. PennDOT, or I shouldn't say PennDOT, PECO has given verbal commitments, and I'm hunting down to get them to just put in writing that they would not work during that summer timeframe on Fridays to allow so that we could do it for the full Friday and not be any issue with traffic or an additional burden with traffic. I also spoke with a lot of the restaurants on Gay Street and some of the retail operations that set up out in the streets. A lot of them actually said that they would be able to manage moving their supplies inside or to the side of their building where it wouldn't be an issue that they would necessarily need a parking spot. So that had been a concern. I know Sean and you and I had discussed about what do restaurants do with all the tables and extra chairs. A lot of them are saying that they can do that. There's 1 or 2 exceptions to that, but the majority that have replied have said that they'll be able to manage their stuff.
And I'm sorry, you did say Pico made a commitment, you
Pico
think?
made during our last, we meet every 9 a.m. every Friday with them. There's a group call with all their subcontractors. Public Works is included in that as well. And they did make a commitment that they could move their work schedule around so that they did not work on Fridays between Memorial Day and Labor Day. I'm tracking down getting that in writing just so we have it on, a written record of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Any comments from residents in attendance on the closure of Gay Street? Ms. Brown?
Good evening. I'm Holly Brown, 37 West Gay Street in Westchester, obviously. John, I have a question. I don't know how many people, I couldn't hear you. How many people did you say responded?
74.
And how many of them were on Gay Street? And I was wondering what the percentage was on those, how they felt about it being closed or open.
If this is being recorded. So on Gay Street, I don't have the exact numbers. I could provide that to council for the next work session, but the percentages broke down pretty evenly to what the overall percentage was. So it was still about just, I think 51% wanted to see it on the weekends on Gay Street. And then the other two might have shifted a little bit, but I can provide council with those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
I think probably they're the ones that are affected mostly by the closure, not the people on the other street. I've been talking to a lot of residents who would love to see the street closed 24/7. They really liked it the past couple of years. And I don't know if many of you know, I've been around a long time. Don't want to get into ages, but I've been studying street closures for 20 some years now, and had the opportunity when I was traveling a lot on business to go to a lot of streets that were closed all throughout the country. Larimer Street in Denver, and the street in Charlottesville, Virginia, Wilmington, Charlotte, Virginia. I've been in the West Coast. I've been to a lot of them and found many reasons why they worked and why they didn't work. The situation we have is one where it generally does work. One of the problems a lot of people have with closed streets permanently, and this may be a topic you want to have later, because I would love to see, I've been wanting to close that street for 20 years now, but it doesn't work in cities. It doesn't work where there's businesses all around. It works where there were two main reasons where it worked, and that was when you had streets on either side, east-west and a west-east, or north-south and a south-north, whatever. So you had traffic moving in opposite directions on either side of the street that was closed. That was when it worked. It also worked when there was a lot of residential area around the street closure. We have all of that. So I think that's something that would probably work in town. We don't lose a lot of parking spaces on Gay Street all year round, and we have the parking, really, if people want to actually drive the car another block, you can usually find a parking space. But I'm going to get a lot of people in next weekend, or next week on the 19th, probably, for your Borough Council work session, to get some input from some of the residents in town to see how they feel about it. Because I can see, and I've talked to the mayor about this, long-term for street closures, I've often sat around thinking about all the things you could do on that street all year long to bring people into town, even January, February, and March, when we really need people to come in and support not only the restaurants and the businesses. Like, one of the things I see is a giant Christmas tree competition all the way up and down Gay Street, where people sponsor Christmas trees. People come in and vote, and you have chestnuts roasting over the fire and all kinds of stuff. So I'd love to work on that later if that's something you would consider. I understand there's an issue with the state, who said they might not let you close it forever. But one of the things I found over 30 some years is you take no as a maybe, because things change over the years. But if it's all right with you, I'll invite a lot of residents to come in next week and talk about the street closure and how they feel about it. I'm assuming from what the chief says, the borough manager, that it is less costly to close it permanently than it is to open and close it every weekend. That's got to be more costly and just logistically a little more of a problem. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Yeah, there has been a lot of discussion around permanently closing, and I think, the first thing is the feasibility study to figure out how or if we should do it, but that's probably not for 2022. Obviously, that would be down the road, but we are having those discussions. I'm guessing we need to pull the trigger on this pretty quickly, right? Being that it's April.
I do think we need to come to a resolution. One thing, and maybe Mr. Metro can update us on all of this is also hinging on we're getting local control of the road back. And so the borough has passed the resolution, submitted paperwork to PennDOT, but I don't believe we've gotten rubber stamped yet that we're getting local control. So, I mean, council can vote this month to say what they want to do, but I do want to bring that to everyone's attention that there is a linchpin here, and that's getting local control.
So again, fluid situation, right, is this whole conversation since last year and how we're going to do this and how are we going to accommodate a closure when you've got another fluid situation happening on Market Street with the PICO work that's scheduled for next year. We received information today, actually, that I followed up with our traffic engineer that the central office for PennDOT wants some information to bolster our application, and that email arrived on Monday. So we're going to conference together. I'll make a call. I'll be away, but I can make a call, and we can figure out where we are and how far away we are, and whether we need to do some concurrent process here in case the closure doesn't happen in the next 6 weeks. I mean, not the closure, the abandonment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think, this will go on the work session next week and we'll have to make a call. Any other comments?
I guess I probably should, just for the record, because I said all this last month. I don't like to repeat myself a lot, but I'm continuing to support closing it 24/7. And we'll talk about it next week.
And for the record, Sheila is on board with the 24/7 as well. Yeah, and she expressed her support of that. Okay, 3F, promotional exams for the ranks of lieutenant and sergeant.
Hello again, Jim Moorhead, Chief of Police. In last month's meeting, I made the request after having a discussion with the mayor about promoting the rank of corporal when Corporal Craig retired in January. It was too early to bring it to public safety's attention, but on March 1st, as you know, Lieutenant Daly was separated from the department, and this creates rank vacancies within the department. So my ask is to add on to the rank of corporal, which we're approved to promote, and begin the process, the studying process for officers to promote to the rank of the lieutenant vacancy, which would then create a sergeant's vacancy, which would then create a corporal's vacancy. So last month, the ask was for corporal. This month, the ask is for sergeant and lieutenant.
I don't have any questions there. Do you? Anyone in the audience? Okay. Sean?
I don't have any problem with the chief's methodology. I just would caution council about the timing of it, knowing that we have a civil service hearing on May 9th, and that could affect, I think I would caution council about taking any action until we know the resolution of that matter. But I do agree with the chief's program of the 5-part dance of promotions that needs to happen.
Promotions.
I have no problem waiting for that
Yeah.
procedure to take place,
Okay.
and we can go from there. But the vacancies do exist. I don't know if we're going to get a lot out of the hearing in May, but remains to be seen, and then we can go from there. So I'm looking for council approval. I will not move on it until the mayor and I are in agreement with full council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments? Okay, moving right along. Action items. Approve the March 2022 public safety meeting minutes. So moved. for April? There we go. Special events for Porch Fest 5/21/22.
Hi. Before we get into the individual applications, Sean asked me to just speak briefly on behalf of the actual special event application. It has been a few years since we've gone through this because of the pandemic. Basically, the special event application comes through my department. I review the application with the organization or groups putting through the application. We go back and forth. I instruct them on what they need to have as far as insurances, and that their request of the services needed from the borough is not what stands. It's the view that I have with the police department, the public works department, the police department. Our individual departments are determining what services are needed for those events. So it's not like XYZ group comes in and says, we only need one officer for the restaurant festival. No, you're going to need a whole lot more than that. So through a back and forth process, reviews with, again, each individual service department here with the borough, we come up with what those fees are. They mentioned them earlier that they changed significantly. It was in 2017 or 2018 by previous council and previous finance administration. Prior to those years, the borough was pretty much supplementing all the outside events that would come through. And it was those administrative decisions that were made that significantly changed costs, not just to outside groups, but to also the Parks and Rec Department and the events we run. So I just want to make it clear that there is a significant back and forth between the organizers and the individual departments within the borough that determine what services are needed and how much those services are going to cost. We do have two events that are going to be discussed here tonight. One is a little smaller than the other. We've reviewed these events with the departments. There are no issues with the events. The costs have been figured out for the Solely Rich Sneaker Convention. We are still determining some final costs for the Porch Fest, but as far as I'm aware, the police department, public works, and the parking department have no issues fulfilling the needs to make these events safe and enjoyable for the community to have.
Mr. Kraske, I have a question for you. So I've seen two fee lists, and just one has the police, and maybe Chief can answer this as well. Police, including vehicle, is $180 an hour.
That's the last fee that I've been working off of.
Okay, so the 128 is an old fee.
It's an old fee, but I don't believe that included the car. When they determined these fees many years ago, there was the cost for an officer and there was a cost for an officer with a vehicle, and they took into all kinds of different costs associated with that. So the fee that I've been using is the 180, correct?
Okay. Okay. So all of these things may not be needed, but if I were to look at this, if I were to look at this fee list and I needed everything on here for just 1 hour, it's $3,200 an hour.
It's expensive. If you need
It's very expensive.
Again, that's the fees that were set forth. That would be up to council or the committee to readdress those fees. If I'm not mistaken, the fees currently associated with the one block Solely Rich Sneaker Convention is about $4,500 for a one-day event that's on one block. I can just imagine what those fees are like the chamber discussed for an event that takes over the entire town. I mean, they're significantly different from several years ago.
Okay. Okay.
I'll let the organizers of either one of the events come up and speak to any particular questions you had. I just wanted to give you a brief review since we haven't done this in a while.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that. And I think that, as I said to the chamber, I think we need to review the fees. We want to make this a destination. To Katie's point, we're competing now with Phoenixville and
like that.
Media and Downingtown and Coatesville. So we need to remain competitive as a destination.
And as was mentioned earlier, when we redid this process, and I believe it was the chamber, the chamber, two other organizations, there was the fee discussed regarding offsetting their costs with parking revenues that we brought in. There were 5 different scales I think we went through. It was a $5, $7, and $10 fee. I don't have that information directly in front of me, but that could be addressed as well. If someone's using our services in the parking garages or parking lots, it could help offset any number of events that take place. Obviously, we have to look in the cost of what it costs us to particularly service and manage those locations as well. Cool.
Thank you.
You got it.
Do we want to go Porch Fest first?
Hi, good evening. My name is Lillian DeBaptiste, and I'm the mayor of Westchester. I live on Walden Drive in Westchester, and I'd like to introduce members of the Green Team. This is Ronnie, and this is Shruti, and they are part of the Westchester Green Team. So together, my office and the Westchester Green Team is sponsoring Porch Fest. As many of you may recall, one of my goals was to bring people together, and I feel that a natural connection is through music and food and arts because it unites people. We see commonalities. We see what makes us all alike. And so to that end, I'm teaming with the Westchester Green Team, which is a strong Westchester organization, and they want to get out the information about Westchester and being a green town. And so we're using music, a common theme in most people's lives, to get that message out. And so to that end, we are having the first time ever Westchester Porch Fest. It's been done in many parts of the country, including New York and South Carolina and North Carolina too, I think, right? North Carolina. And so we want to bring this first time event to Westchester, and hopefully it will be beloved like the Westchester Parade and the Westchester Restaurant Festival. So we want this to be beloved, but we're starting small. So our goal is to have, and we've gone through the application process. We do have a sign off from Keith Kurowski and Sergeant Gorman from the police department, and Keith from Parks and Recreation. So our application is complete with all of the information they needed. We're also showing additional insurance from the Westchester Green Team, event insurance for that day. It will be private citizens who will be hosting musicians, artists, bands, soloists on many porches throughout the borough. We do have a lineup of those porches in the application for your perusal. It will mainly be on West Union Street, but not solely. There will be a block of Dean Street that will be cordoned off as well. And so our goal is to have musicians in this section of town that everyone can come and join in and enjoy the music. There is not a fee. This is not a fundraiser. This is an event that aims to talk about being clean, being green, and also being human. So that is our goal, to bring Westchester together and have the enthusiasm. This will be an initial event because we haven't had any events in a while. We will also have about 5, perhaps 6, 5 confirmed. We're hoping for one more food truck, so that we will have some food and music, and we'll have some information booths. This is a coordinated effort because the Good Fellowship Ambulance Company, they are working with us, and they are going to have people there at no charge to make sure that everyone is safe and sound as well. So this is our event. You have the brochures in front of you. I don't know if you want to turn the pages or if you have any specific questions. We've been working hard on it, particularly these two ladies here. Margaret Hudgens, as many people know, her along with Nathaniel Smith are critical members of the Westchester Green Team and founders of the Westchester Green Team. They could not be here tonight, although they might be here virtually.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's May 21st from
1 to 7.
1 to 7 p.m.
21st from 1 to 7. The rain date is the 22nd, the same time. from 1 to 7.
Okay.
So
Sounds like a great event. Looking forward to it.
yeah, we're looking forward to it too.
Thank
I'm
you.
grayer because of it, but we're. Yeah, we all are. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions. Sounds like you guys have it well mapped out.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from anyone in attendance? All right. The next item is the solely
Does the committee have a recommendation on that action item?
to approve it for, yes. Hello.
So my name is Francis. The other name on the application is Jonathan Sanchez. He's my boyfriend. We've been together for 8 years. He couldn't be here today. But just a little background on who we are, I guess, how we got started on everything. My career has been a branch manager with a finance company, so we both had kind of our day jobs. He has a career from University Technical Institute as an auto mechanic with credentials with Ford. So pandemic, shook everybody up. So around that time, he got laid off, and he kind of just reevaluated what he can do in the meantime until, we can find another job for him. And that's when he started getting more into the sneaker business because he had already done it a little bit, kind of dabbled, and you'd be surprised how profitable the sneaker community could be. I think recently there's been new evaluations where it's like a $6 billion business at this point, especially through the pandemic with the reselling of sneakers. So that's when we started kind of doing more of the sneaker reselling, and then he transitioned more into these events where we can host the actual sneaker convention because through the pandemic, there wasn't that much like in-person contact. Everything was through third-party apps, StockX. They took a big chunk, out of any sale. So it's pretty much bringing everybody together. We have had events usually at the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center in Oaks. So that's where we have usually had our events indoor. There is a big community that travels pretty far to come to our events. And we have a lot of different influencers that have a big following that's going to be covering the events. We have a specific influencer that has 800,000 followers on YouTube, and he's going to be doing like a video on Westchester. So I forget exactly how we stumbled upon Westchester, but we pretty much like fell in love with it. It's so beautiful here. We live in Douglasville, so it's a little bit far away. Even just coming in here today and everybody knew each other and everybody's just talking, the atmosphere is great. So we really want to bring the event to Westchester, especially this being our first outdoor event. We will have one food truck there because we're going to try to work more with the restaurants in the area to see if we can do any type of specials to kind of get all of the people that are attending our event to kind of push out to the restaurants and see more of Westchester and the feel of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We're just really looking forward to bringing our community to your community. And it really is a large community. We have people from New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Virginia. We even had people travel as far as Georgia all the way up to our events. Our age demographic, too, is pretty much as young as 13, as old as like maybe 45, 50. So it's a really family event. We have a lot of the times there's like parents that get involved in their children's kind of business venture of the sneaker reselling, and everybody has a great time in the event. It's really for all ages and bringing a lot of that exposure to people who don't know where Westchester is, what Westchester is about. There's a huge university here, so just kind of bringing all of that to Westchester is what we're looking to do.
So your event, it looks like, is May 7th
Yes.
from 12 to 5. And where are you holding it? I didn't.
So it's going to be on Church Street between Gay Street and Market Street. So right that corner of the 44 West building and to the Chocolatier.
And how many, like your indoor events, how many people do you normally attract?
So our last event, we had 100 vendors. Each vendor table usually has 2 vendors to a table. We had about 400 people just in attendance, general admission. And we usually have like the wristband where they can kind of come and go. into the events, but this is going to be more of an open event since it's on the street. But yeah, we usually have a pretty big following.
Okay, okay. Any questions, Nick?
I'm trying, so how many vendors were you estimating to have for this event?
For this one, actually, I think it said 60, but it's probably going to be closer to 50.
Have we looked into that's going to fit in that block? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. That
Yeah,
just,
we usually
just having a hard
have,
time
like,
getting that to work
side
in my
by
head.
side. So we're going to have like a row of vendors on one side, a row of vendors on the other side. We're going to keep this sidewalks clear and then have the space in between for the flow.
Sure. Okay.
And then I think we will have 2 officers present, and then part of the Solely Ridge team that we're going to have there helping out with the event. We do have 2 crowd managers as well to kind of, keep the flow of traffic going and not make sure it doesn't get too packed.
And the vendors are reselling sneakers?
Yes, sneakers.
All 50 of them?
And streetwear, some streetwear.
Wow, okay. Okay. Any questions from anyone in attendance?
Thank you.
Okay. We can put that on the voting session as well. Any other business? We are finally to number 5 for public safety. Okay, meeting adjourned at 6:33. Thank you.